Well, generally, when you make personal appearances in a city, you get very little chance to actually see. So you're either going someplace, you're making an appearance someplace. To actually go sightseeing, why, unless you actually take a trip going around to see something, you don't get to see very much. You never, pay too much attention. But I made my first appearance in Baltimore back after I made my first picture, and then I came back here in 1943 and made my first rodeo appearance in the old stadium over here. And I understand they've improved it a lot since I was here, but I'll never forget it was raining, and I did an act with Trigger where I was supposed to be shot off of him, and it was a picture being painted by the announcer, cowboy riding through outlaw-infested country, and a shot rings out, and I fall off, and Trigger comes back and rolls me over, and it's muddy, and I struggle, and he lays down to the side of me, and I get on him, and the announcer's painting this picture. And so we start off, and another shot rings out, and Trigger lets sound like he gets shot in the leg, so he cripples along, and pretty soon he goes down, and I roll out of the saddle, and we lay there for a while, and a little pin spot hits us, and they play taps, And just at the end of the taps, Trigger gets up. As he gets up, I get on him, and we rode out. But it rained the whole time we were here. It was one of those rainy seasons, and the only thing we could do was spread all around in the area as near as we could cover it with shavings or something like that. And I'll never forget, I ruined every suit I had. I had white suits and dressed real bright because of being outdoors like that. And but that was my very first appearance in Baltimore, and that's been this 1943. It's a long time ago. And one thing impressed me, was the way the houses are built next to one another, block after block, a lot the same in Washington, D.C. Buildings and monuments. And flying in here yesterday, I was so thrilled seeing all the beautiful azaleas and the dogwood. As I was raised in southern Ohio, and we had a lot of dogwood and redbud and lilacs and the same type flowers that you have here. Except I don't remember having azaleas growing so many like you have here. I guess it's a little farther south, and they do better down here.
I'm very curious about your new movie. Will you be singing in it?
I think so, very little though, I think, because it's going to be set in the early 1900s, and it'll be that period on the Mexican border. There may be some music in it. I just don't know how much, but in fact, all I've seen is the outline of the picture. I haven't seen a script or anything, so I couldn't say, but I imagine there'll be some in it.
What sort of character are you going to be playing?
Well, I'll be playing, I haven't seen, but in the script that I saw so far, the outline, I'm Roy Rogers in those days. And it's, I have a young fellow that's with me, and I'm a marshal or a deputy or something. And he's a young, hot-headed kid that wants to kill everybody that does something wrong, and I'm trying to tell him there's a different way, And it gets on through and gets through a lot of gory situations till it gets down to the end. And finally, I've sold him my way of apprehending these guys without shooting them all to pieces. And the first guy that it happens to, this guy shoots him. And that puts me in a real rough spot. So I have to go after this guy that shot my young deputy. So that's about as much as I know about it, because it just was an outline, a thin outline of the story. But it's going to be made at Paramount, and we got they're shooting for a starting date in the middle of July.
Do you know when it will be released?
What did you say?
Do you know any time when it will be released, possibly?
No, I don't know anything about it yet, because I haven't even seen the script, but they say it'll take 2.5 months to make it. So I would say probably sometime after the first of the year, next year.
I grew up with Roy Rogers. I can remember your television show, your movies with Pat Brady, The Wonder Dog Bullet.
Yes.
And at the end, when the credits would roll over, Happy Trails.
Yes.
And you always portrayed a family image. Do you and your wife get involved with any organizations that involve children?
Oh, all the time. Chris Dale's written 12 books, and she's dedicated most of the royalties. The first one to the mentally retarded, then one to the diabetic kids, and different organizations as that. And we have been down through the years. Naturally, we've made a lot of appearances at a lot of different organizations, cerebral palsy, and of course we always, when we have time and going into a town like we're playing a rodeo or something, we have time off in the daytime. We'll visit hospitals and mentally retarded places, and for kids that can't get out. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. Let me ask you something else. Your museum. You mentioned before in the press interview that it contained all of the memorabilia from your days in television and radio. Does it have the Jeep that was in your television?
Yes, a little Jeep that Pat Brady drove all the time, and I don't know whether the folks know it or not, but we lost Pat 2 years ago in February, this past February. He was up in Colorado, and he turned a pickup truck over on him and killed himself. It was a very untimely and sad situation, but those things do happen. But I have little Jeep Nellie Bell and Trigger and Bullet. They're all in the museum. Buttermilk, Dale's little horse, is still living. He's at the ranch, spry as it can be, but he's about 31 years old. So we are expecting something to happen to him anytime. So they have a new way of, I don't like to say animals or stuff, because I've seen them in the Smithsonian Institute and a lot of the different museums around over the country, and they do a beautiful job mounting animals. And they're actually mounted now. They make molds out of fiberglass, and then they stretch the hide over that. And the stuffing goes back the way they used to have make dolls. Before they had materials that they have today. They used to actually make the dolls out of cloth and then stuff it with Excelsior and different kinds of stuffing, and that's where the word stuff came from. And I like the word mounted, mounted much better.
Do you ever contemplate, if approached, to do a television series like the one you did?
I wouldn't want to go into a weekly thing. I wouldn't mind making some pictures for television, but a weekly thing is such a grind. I've done it, and it's rough, especially when you haven't been doing it every day after day after day, because you have to really get up early and work late on those things because of the budgets they have on them. I wouldn't mind doing maybe a few specials and things like that.
Do you miss the days of Roy Rogers television shows at all? Do you look back and say, boy, I really miss the times and the fun I had?
Yes, well, I had a lot of fun doing it, but I did 188 pictures, and that's a lot of riding and fighting and banging yourselves around, and a lot of people think if somebody else is doing it, but I got a lot of scars from doing things in my fights and things like this, because once in a while things happen. You get knocked colder than a mackerel once in a while, and you have to run into a building and knock the door open or something, and you're fighting on these rocks, and your knees get cut, and your elbows get skinned, about a lot worse than the basketball players. They get clobbered once in a while too.
Did you ever do your own stunts?
Oh yeah, I did a lot of my own stuff, all my own riding and fighting and running mounts and rearing and things like this.
Did you use
I didn't jump over any cliffs or anything like that, but I did all that action.
Did you ever get seriously hurt?
Not serious, no, but I've been laid up for a while. I tore my ankle up once, and both of my knees have been hurt. But I've been very lucky with all the action I've been through.
Will you do all your stunts in your new picture?
I doubt it. They'll have. It depends on what they have in the picture. I'll do my own writing and fighting and close-ups and stuff. But at my age, I am about to do any of those chances of. The older you get, the easier you break, and the longer it takes to heal. And I wouldn't want to take a chance on doing some of the things I used to do. But I'll do most of my fighting and stuff like that.
Do you ride now for recreation?
Do I what?
Ride.
You mean just for fun?
Yeah.
No. It's like a postman taking a walk on his day off.
Would you like to see the character that you portrayed in so many films sort of experience a rejuvenation, like as they mentioned before, the way that
Mhm.
character images have changed so much. Do you think it could catch on again?
Well, I think kids are kids. I think probably the toys that kids like today is because of what they see on television, the space things and everything. And I know when our pictures were on, the kids were wearing cowboy suits and cowboy hats and guns and holsters and spurs and things like that. And children are actually what they see and that kind of makes them grow up. What they grow up with is what they are actually.
Have you ever played with any other singing cowboys like Tex Ritter? Did you ever play with them?
Not no. I knew Tex very well, and I made personal appearances in the same areas he has been in, and I knew Tex and his wife and family. And I knew most of the guys, you know. We met socially sometimes. I never got really personally acquainted with any of them because they, like myself, were working all the time. If when I was on a picture, they would be on the road or vice versa. And you really have a busy schedule if you're going to keep going, you know. And as soon as when I first started in pictures, I had to do personal appearances to pay for my family, practically, because I wasn't making that much under contract.
Now, the music that you sang when you did your motion pictures was considered country and western at that time.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about the country and western music of today compared to what you did when you were making your motion pictures?
Well, country and western music is basically the same. You're just talking about something farther west than Missouri and or Tennessee or Arkansas, and you're talking about cattle and that area instead of talking about a lot of prison songs now and the Kentucky rain and stuff like that. You know, it could be Nevada rain just the same as it could be Kentucky rain or snow or something. And the tunes and the tempos, they changed the tempo just like, and I think a lot of it rubbed off from the rock and roll and into some of the tempos have changed in even the Western songs today. I've heard them take several of the old Western songs and completely change the tempos, and it sounded like almost like a new song, except the lyrics were the same.
Excuse me, aside from your new picture, what are your plans for the future?
Just what I'm doing. I go hunting every once in a while. I've been to Africa on 3 different safaris and up in Alaska and hunted all over this country. And I like to fish. And during the winter I have a bowling team that I sponsor, and I bowl twice a week on bowling team and practice in between.
We heard you almost bowled out here last night, but you came in.
Oh, we were going to, but I got halfway to Los Angeles the other day, and I got everything in the car but my bowling ball. So we were a little tired last night, and they had some things for us to do, so we didn't go bowling. But I have a 184 average, and I love to bowl. And we just won the Winter League in Victorville, California, for the 5th time in a row. We got a real good, steady team.
What are you going to do professionally now?
Oh, just we do about 6 state fairs a year, and I do TV shows at home, and I come on the road about twice a year to visit some of our restaurants, and we have about 130 around over the country, and some in the opening process or building process, and some in the planning, and then I have some race horses at home, which takes up quite a bit of my time. Our children are all married now, and I have 15 grandchildren. Very representative game from different species. And I got elephant and lions and leopards and greater kudu, sable antelope, Thompson gazelle, one of just about everything. Topies, wildebeest, hartebeest, warthogs.
Did you ever go after an elephant?
Yes, I got a real nice elephant. I got an 80-pounder, which they they go by the weight of the tusks, and each one of these tusks weighed 80 pounds. One was pound or two off, give or take a little, from the other. And I got him about 4 years ago in Tanzania. And I'm scheduled to go to Africa this October on a safari with Senator Goldwater and General Doolittle on a people-to-people thing where we take a plane load of sporting goods and pass them out to these different places where they stop. And they'll have a scheduled place where they're supposed to stop, where this stuff is needed, like footballs and basketballs, baseballs and bats and gloves and all kinds of things.
One other question. Your fame, I'm sure, spread internationally. Is any of your films or television material still being run in other countries?
Yeah, all around the world.
Are they dubbed? Do they still ever?
Yes, yes. I met the fellow that does my voice in Portuguese down in Brazil here a few years ago, and he did sound quite a bit like me. And I've never met him, but I heard myself speak in Japanese one time, and I like to flip. I never met this fellow, but it's really something. Or Chinese, I would like to see it in Chinese sometime, but they're dubbed in different languages all over.
I'd like to ask just one question on
Mhm.
a totally different subject. I don't even know if you want to answer it, but I was wondering what you think about the Watergate revelations, everything that's been going on.
Oh God, let's don't get into that. I've heard so much about it, I don't even want to listen to it. I have no opinions because I don't know all of each side, so I'd rather not even talk about it. It's a sad thing to happen to this country, is all I can say. I believe.
Well, I'd just like to make one more statement. You were called the King of the Cowboys, and I think that statement still holds true,
Mhm.
in my opinion, because I grew up with Roy Rogers,
Mhm.
and I still think you're the King of the Cowboys, and it was a pleasure meeting you.
Well, thank you very much. I have a beautiful time. This is one of the reasons you like to make these personal appearances, because I get those kind of things and kind of questions and answers. And it makes you feel good that people still remember you and like you. And I became the King of the Cowboys in the box office in 1943 and right on into television. And of course, when television came in, that phased out all the cowboys that made series at that time, like the Johnny McBrowns and Charles Starretts and everything. And a few of us were lucky enough to go on into television, and I was one of them.
Did you watch any of those Clint Eastwood movies?
Hmm?
Did you ever watch any of those Clint Eastwood cowboy movies?
Clint Eastwood's? No, I've never seen one of them, but I've heard of them. But
Fistful of Dollars.
I don't see very many movies. I guess I should go see some. I got stuck on one time, and I've been afraid to go back to see anymore. I don't want to mention the name, but it was a cowboy too. Yeah, that's the one.
In the early days of your career,
I thought I was going down in New York City, and I thought, well, I didn't have anything to do, and I was walking down the street and I saw this up on the marquee. I said, well, I'll go see a cowboy picture. It was one of the biggest mistakes I ever made in my life. I wanted to crawl under the seat and sneak out the back door. Excuse me, what did you say?
I was going to say, in the early days of your career, did you ever set any personal goals, or as your family grew, did you ever sort of just want them, your children and your other family members, to set goals for themselves?
For the kids?
Yes.
Our children? No, I more or less, as they grew up, I let them, I didn't try to push them into anything. Most of all, I wanted them to get their education. And I knew that they're all individual people when they grow up and get to the point of when they can think and for themselves, that they would decide what they want to do. And lots of times parents will try to push their children in something, and they finally push them out of everything that they might have been interested in themselves. So being individuals and everybody being different, I think the child, or as they grow up and be young men and young women, they have to make their own decision of what they should or shouldn't be. You can suggest, and that's about it, because they're going to do basically what they want to do or what they have goals probably set for themselves. I know I had a lot of ideas. I thought I was going to be a doctor, but I never got to have never had a chance to get the education because of the era that I grew up in, and I had to quit and go to work. But I think it's better to, unless you got a business, and you take a lot of fellows that will have a good business they'd like for their son to follow in their footsteps. Well, now, if he likes that, and he'll do good in it. But if he doesn't like it and he's doing it just because Dad wants him to do, it's going to be a bad mistake. Because this may not be his bag, you know, he might not like it. And if you don't like what you're doing, it's kind of hard to do a good job of it. So I just never suggested. I tried to get my son to go to college, but it was like talking to a post, so I finally gave up. And so he went back east and went in construction. He's had 6 years in construction of all phases. And he is in California now. He's a field superintendent for one of our big builders up in Victorville. So this is something, he's happy as he can be, and he's got 2 beautiful children. So I think from a few experiences I've had in my own family, I think it's better for them to make up their own mind.
Are you hopeful about the country's future?
Yes, I never give up hopes on America, because I still, no matter what goes or comes or is wrong, I think it'll be fixed. And I think that we still have the greatest country in the world. And I think we've surmounted a lot of bad situations back through the years, and I think we'll overcome anything that happens in the future.
Thank you.
I have a lot of hopes for it.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Nice meeting.
Okay, nice to see you all. I'm going to, somebody told me I'm supposed to be on television on one of those celebrity bowls. I wish they wouldn't even run it. And we were on, I was
That's
bowling.
on Channel 45, that's on our station.
I was bowling with Ruth Bussey. And she's something else. And we were playing against Fannie Flagg and a comedian by the name of Herman, something out of Las Vegas. And you're going to believe this. Fannie, Ruth and I, bowled 114. They were hollering all the way through the thing, kidding one, you know, every time they approached. And we did 114, and we beat these. So you can imagine how lousy it is.
Gary.
Gary?
Yes.
G-A-R-Y?
Right.
How big is Gary? Is that
Oh,
you?
about
That's
this
you.
big. It'll look very nice next to my Roy Rogers stagecoach.
Okay, Gary, thank you.
Thank you.
Roy, I have 5 children, but I want this for myself.
Okay.
It's for George, G-E-O-R-G. Here, thank you.
Now that I would be looking for only.
We never did get our coffee, did we?
I'd like to.
No, and I just called.
Can I do that?
Maybe they took it someplace else.
Catch me looking at this one.
Oh.
Just like I go
A
down
friend
to
of
Reed
mine
sometimes, and I go to work with him.
works at
Would I be able to?
one of the
kiss you
restaurants.
when I leave?
And he always talks about how everything is down there and everything.
Any night, Monday,
Always end up going down there for lunch all the time.